This is 680 CJOB, Winnipeg's Morning News.
Minus 13 headed to minus 11 this Thursday at 6:15.
And a historic shift in U.S. policy after a half-century of tensions with Cuba. U.S. President Barack Obama says the two governments have agreed to reestablish diplomatic relations and to open economic and travel ties. Obama said there are many opportunities for cooperation that will benefit both countries.
Where we can advance shared interests, we will, on issues like health, migration, counterterrorism, drug trafficking, and disaster response.
With us on Winnipeg's Morning News on 680 CJOB is Arnold August. He's written about Cuba and joins us now. Mr. August, were you surprised by this announcement?
I was not that surprised. In fact, I have to admit that just 1 or 2 weeks prior to that, with regards to one of the features, the exchange of prisoners, I mentioned to one of my friends who was involved with me and many others in the United States and Canada and other countries in working for the freedom of the remaining 3 Cuban prisoners. And I predicted to her, saying that I am sure the 3 of them will be home before Christmas. And when I found out about the news yesterday, I said to myself, well, first I was really happy that this took place, and secondly, well, that I was right that it would happen before Christmas, and it did.
And there was the prisoner exchange. There was the businessman that was held in Cuba for the last 5 years, and he was brought home to the United States on a government jet. And there was also, I gather, an American operative who had been held prisoner in Cuba for some 20 years, all part of this exchange. So what does the warming of relations mean for Cuba?
I think that the warming of relations for Cuba, first and foremost, watching the Cuban news, which I have by satellite here in my home, is that firstly, the overwhelming joy that the 3 remaining Cubans have come back to Cuba, and they have already returned the very same day, yesterday, December 17th. This is, I would say, was the main feature. At the same time, the Cubans are conscious about the fact that the decision coming out of the phone call between the 2 presidents and the respective declarations is that Cuba and the United States are to open up diplomatic relations with a full embassy in their respective capitals. This is the first time that this is happening since the revolution took place on January 1st, 1959. The opening up of embassies in their respective capitals. This is more than just a legal or diplomatic fact. It has profound political implications in that it means that the United States recognizes Cuba without any conditions. Whereas before that, they always put conditions that Cuba had to change its political system, its economic system, to conform to the U.S. view on how Cuba should be run, what Cuba's destination should be. But this is no longer the case. Now that is what is fresh and new out of the new meetings, that diplomatic relations are being developed right now as we speak with no conditions from either of the 2 sides.
Mr. August, real quick, because we're running short of time, but speaking of implications, what does it mean for this country? What does it mean for Canadians?
Well, I think, if you're a Canadian businessman, I guess, since yesterday noon when the announcement came out, some Canadian businessmen who were operating in Cuba, and there are quite a few, as you know. Canada is an important commercial partner to Cuba. They may be worried that for the first time since the revolution, they will have competition from American corporations, American companies starting to invest in Cuba, which is now possible since the new steps taken by President Obama and announced yesterday. But I think from amongst the ordinary Canadians, many of which, as you know, almost everyone has either been to Cuba or knows someone who has been to Cuba in terms of a touristic.
So is it going to be dominated, or the beach is going to be full of Americans now?
Well, To tell you the truth, as you know, for my work, I'm in contact on a daily basis with my Cuban colleagues, and this has been an ongoing joke they've been telling me for a few years, saying that they hope that the Cuban blockade does not come down, because this will mean that they will be invaded by American tourists.
Our author, Arnold August, joining us on 680 CJOB, is author of Cuba and the Neighbors.